OK, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's historian and journalist Jeremy Havardi. But we can move on now to defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who joins us. Robert, a very good morning to you. This was inevitable, wasn't it?
Well, almost inevitable. I never like to say that everything is inevitable because, as you and Mark have been saying in your questions, and I'm very close to what you're thinking on this, is what is the outcome? What is the end game? And I think that that is so completely uncertain. Because I'm sorry, I'd like to add to what the previous speaker, extremely interesting and insightful though his remarks were, there is no alternative regime in sight, as far as we can see. And obviously what America and Israel combined are going to do is going to be almost entirely from the air, no boots on the ground, no occupation, no taking and holding ground. So it's very difficult to say what the outcome will be. And this may just be the first phase. It's very interesting. The initial phrasing was that this was preventative. What were they preventing against? And I think that, as we have heard before, they are extremely worried about what Iran will do with its very heavy drones, but above all, its ballistic missiles, which just a handful of the thousands they have will get through and hit Israel's very vulnerable city centres.
Right. Many of our viewers are getting in touch already saying, what's the point of this if you cannot achieve regime change? They'll just take it out on their own citizens. There'll be more shootings and murder.
Well, that is the extremely worrying situation. But I go back to the word preventative again. I think that they were quite worried that the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, was about to launch an attack on Israel. Because as we heard, the talks that they've been having on, off, but particularly with the foreign minister, Arauchi, and the posture of the man who is effectively in charge of day-to-day running of the regime in a very ruthless fashion, Ali Larijani, their conversation, their talk has become quite a bit more aggressive of late. No, we're not going to do these things. We're not going to give up our nuclear potential. And there is a great deal of worry that there is quite a bit of highly enriched uranium, not quite to weapons grade, but can get there very quickly, sloshing around, and they don't know where it is. About 400 kilograms of it.
And that's the point, isn't it? We were speaking to a guest, Eric Ham, earlier, who told us that Iran's compliant. It was compliant with the IAEA and their inspectors' reports. But of course, US intelligence, Israeli intelligence points to a different story. As you said, there are real concerns that you've got this enriched uranium that's out there that could be at some point turned into a bomb. Couple that with the advancements they're making on their ballistic missile program, then you've got a very unpalatable situation going forward. Many people, of course, don't want to see what's happening in Iran, but the alternative could be just as bad.
Yes, indeed. And we had Midnight Hammer, the 12-day campaign last year. It did quite a lot of damage, but not enough. Mark, as you rightly have pointed to, there have been signs of a great deal of improvement in the missile armaments and that they have been getting new brands, real upgrades in missiles ready. This is yet another trigger for the action, as I see it today. And by the way, back to the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, as they always note, how brilliant the Iranians are at evasion. Yes, they declare things. Yes, they appear to be conforming a certain amount to the restrictions, but there's always an awful lot hidden. And the fear is that a lot of what is hidden could be seriously threatening. It's going to be very interesting as to where Britain comes into this, because one of the target areas that really is extremely vulnerable to the new medium-range missiles is, of course, Cyprus and the British bases there.
Robert,
I was just going to ask about that. What is the danger to any of UK interests?
Well, the alliance, there are joint bases, but above all, it really is Cyprus. And despite the toing and froing of the government, the Starmer government, whether they would close the sovereign bases, whether they might even deny Diego Garcia, much in the news in the row over the Chagos Islands, because they did not regard the war, which now seems to be opening on Iran, as legal in terms of international law. I don't think that the Iranians will care about it. There will be no niceties about it. And actually, if it is a military necessity, deemed a military necessity by America, America will just go ahead and use them, I suspect.
Don't realise. Your personal data isn't just floating around. It's being bought and sold every single day by data brokers. That means employers, strangers, scammers, and even criminals can access it. And that's how identity theft, fraud, and harassment starts. Now, sure, you could try removing it yourself, but it takes hours of forms and emails, and even then, it usually pops right back up. That's why this video is brought to you by Incogni. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and demands your information is deleted from their databases, and they keep on doing it to make sure it stays gone. And they've just launched an unlimited plan with custom removals. So if your info appears on some random website, you can paste the link and their privacy team will personally work to get it taken down. It's simple. Click the link in the description, create your account, give permission, and they handle the rest. Head to incogni.com/GB News. And with the code GB News, you can get a huge 60% off an annual plan. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code now. It works out at less than a coffee a month. It's also totally risk-free for 30 days. Take back control of your personal data today with Incogni. And a big thanks to them for supporting the channel.
I just want to get your instant analysis, please, on a very significant line coming through from the New York Times, quoting the official that confirmed US strikes were underway. That official has now told the New York Times that the operation that is currently unfolding will be far more widespread and extensive than Operation Midnight Hammer, of course, strikes that took place last year against Iran's nuclear facilities. Far more widespread and extensive than Midnight Hammer, Robert.
Yes, the BDA, the bomb damage assessment and analysis of Midnight Hammer, was actually that it wasn't enough. There was too much left around. There was too much known unknown, to use to quote Donald Rumsfeld's famous dictum about these things. And I think that what we have seen is actually quite a bit of preparation, because the Israel government has warned its people to be prepared to go for a permanent shutdown into shelters, because this thing looks as if it will be sustained. I suspect it will last weeks. It depends how much ammunition stock and resupply the American forces have. They'll be using the 2 aircraft carriers, but they will only be quite a small part, I suspect, of what we're going to see. No, it looks to me that America and Israel have prepared to see this one through. So, again, I rather disagree. I think we are looking at an attempt at regime change.
I think you may well be right there. Listen, we've got another significant line. Sorry to keep throwing them at you, but that's your expertise.
No, it's a very fast moving. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So these are Israeli sources now who say that the entire senior Iranian command structure is the target of ongoing decapitation strikes. That Israel says that they are preparing for several days of war. So as we were predicting earlier on GB News Breakfast, this is unlikely to be limited to just a single strike or two, but we could be in here for successive waves of strikes over the coming hours and days.
Well, the sign of that, of course, was that they have 2 aircraft carriers, because if you're going to run serial operations, as you know, Mark, you've got to have 2 aircraft carriers. You can't do it just from one. And I think that it will be very important in this respect. We've got to look at the other side, out of metropolitan Iran, if I could put it like that, and look at the really vulnerable choke points. I've talked for Britain, particularly, we've talked about Cyprus, but actually there are local Arab interests right across the Gulf. There are the American bases there, and there has been, they've opened the fist slightly, the Iranian command, in having exercises very recently about closing the Straits of Hormuz. That would make it of global significance. And I think it would bring in the allies, particularly Britain and France. We have got a lot of forces in the area for backup particularly for Jordan, which is also very, very worried. But you watch this, and I think we must watch the Seaway, which is enormously important for the global trade in energy, oil and gas, particularly gas from Qatar. And I think there will be a lot of activity there. They will try and prevent things like swarm attacks, mining attacks, attacks, even pinprick attacks or even bigger ones on the bases in countries like Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, all the way down the Gulf to the Arabian Sea, where the Abraham Lincoln is right now.
Yeah, Robert, we've just heard as well that Reuters report, they've been told by an Iranian official that Tehran is preparing for retaliation and the response will be crushing.
Yes, that is what I would fear, because there is the problem with the dilemma which faces Israel, particularly. They've got highly effective counter-missile systems. They have extra Patriot batteries, but above all, they have their own Iron Dome, and they have the high-altitude defense, the THAAD, THAAD. But when you're launching hundreds at a time in a swarm, there's always a chance that that slack handful, only half a dozen need get through, and it's a real threat to Israel. This is very serious indeed.
Well, I was struck, Robert, with the attacks that were launched by the US last year, and then you saw the retaliatory strikes on Israel, as they always do. How many ballistic missiles we could see getting through the images. And we're looking just to tell our viewers, and of course for those listening on radio, we are monitoring live images on the left of Jerusalem, on the right of Tel Aviv, for the potential for retaliatory strikes. The Israeli population have not yet had those alarms telling them to go to their shelters, but that may come at any moment, as you well know, Robert.
Yes, indeed. And that's where they will have to go to shelters. I wonder whether they will try to pull all their stops out with their alliances. By that, I mean, you have to look at the Houthis in Yemen. Will they persuade them? They are their close allies. In a way, they have been even their proxies. And their best stuff is medium, long-range missiles and drones from Iran. So the prospect is pretty alarming, because, Mark, as you were suggesting with that remark, is that I think that we're potentially looking at quite a regional conflict. And regional conflicts in the Middle East, you know where they go. They have enormous global impact, either directly or even indirectly. And I said, you know, look at global markets in oil and energy. Shipping will be disrupted again. And all the signs so far from the different sourcing, which you've been following, I've been following, the New York Times, Times of Israel, quoting official spokesman, is that it looks as if they're settling in for a campaign of weeks rather than days.
Well, one thing you mentioned earlier, which I wonder if you could just explain more, is Diego Garcia, and whether, if this is prolonged, as you are suggesting it might be, Diego Garcia would be called in for play. And would that be a test of our relationship with that particular site?
Well, I think it's going to be so peculiar because which I shouldn't put it like that. I think we know from satellite imagery there are a lot of American assets, that they call them naval, but above all air force there already, as there have been going through Cyprus, as there have been going through the US bases in Britain. Yes, it is a kind of a test. Actually, it's a real bite on the posture of the Starmer government, which believes in, Mark and I have remarked so often on GB News, believe in lawfare rather than warfare. The law doesn't allow this. But by the way, just as a subset to this, can I say the whole Chagos affair with the UK, I just put it like that, looks so confused, so murky. In any reasonable world, there would have to be a major parliamentary inquiry and scrutiny. And I think that the government has got to come a lot cleaner than it is already about how all this came about and why, when we know that they're restricting expenditure because of all the problems on defence, they are prepared to go ahead and spend up to £35 billion out of the defence budget on the Chagos deal, which where a lot of the money will go to Mauritius. Quite a dodgy regime in one way and another, but the British government supports it.
One of life's great mysteries, Robert. And as you say, there may well be more to that particular can of worms, should anyone be prepared to open it up.
Yeah, we have to let you go, Robert. It's so good to have you this morning explaining, hopefully, what's going on at the moment, what is likely to happen and unfold throughout the day.
You find me in the home of the British military at Tidworth, and I hope to be able to join you later. Thank you.
Absolutely. That would be terrific. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.